New song. That's for anybody who wants to find it or get it. Winona Carr, Our Father. Album is called Dragnet for Jesus, which is pretty hilarious. Was just continuing to dwell on just, still feeling this, just unrest in my soul, and I'm not sure what it's about. Just going back and forth a little bit the last couple of days, and within myself. And although in one way you should consider it a privilege, because I feel like trouble in the soul really does send one searching, and trouble in my soul sends me to the foot of my God and my Savior, and that's a good place to be, and it's a good place to find peace, and know that even if I am not at rest, that He who found me and sacrificed for me is certainly at rest, is certainly at peace, and to just cling to His peace and stop trying to scrabble through it in my own desperate attempts. I was just dwelling more today too on the suffering of Christ, and that whole statement of the unification of the Old Testament and the New Testament, and that the seemingly judgmental God of the Old Testament, that somehow He was transformed and wasn't the same in the New Testament, but that His judgment is just as harsh and just as unrelenting in its destruction of unrighteousness. Why would He suffer any unrighteousness? Why should any of us suffer any unrighteousness? So much so that He broke and smashed and tore to bits the body of his beloved Son for all of us. And there comes, you almost can't really fully accept that, I guess, unless you are willing to acknowledge that you are broken, or that you are imperfect in and of yourself. Or otherwise that sacrifice wouldn't mean anything to you, I guess, right? It would be like, oh, a nice gesture, but it has nothing to do with anything. But I know that I am broken. I know that I am not holy, and there's no holiness to be found deep within me. But that my holiness is to be found in surrender, in sweet surrender at the feet of God. And He reached out to me so mightily and so humbly and so crazily by my standards, by human standards, gave of Himself that I might see Him. And that's just monstrous. And so I just want to read these two things that sort of parallel the Christ's suffering for us and why. About 700 BC, there, give or take, Isaiah had a word from God. He was a prophet, and spoke many things to many kings, and spoke of Cyrus the Great, and that he would come and cleanse the land, and He did. And then He said that one day there will be one greater than Cyrus, the servant of the Lord, servant, uppercase S. Anyway, surely He has borne our griefs and carried our sorrows. Yet we esteemed Him stricken, smitten by God, and afflicted. But He was wounded for our transgressions. He was bruised for our iniquities. The chastisement for our peace was upon Him, and by His stripes we are healed. All we like sheep have gone astray. We have turned every one on his own way, and the Lord has laid on Him the iniquity of us all. He was oppressed and He was afflicted, yet He opened not His mouth. He was led as a lamb to the slaughter, and as a sheep before its shearers is silent, so He opened not His mouth. He was taken from prison and from judgment, and who will declare His generation? For he was cut off from the land of the living. For the transgressions of my people he was stricken. And they made his grave with the wicked, but with rich at his death, because he had done no violence, nor was any deceit in his mouth. Yet it pleased the Lord to bruise him. He had put him to grief. When you make his soul an offering for sin, he shall see his seed, he shall prolong his days, and the pleasure of the Lord shall prosper in his hand. Ye shall see the labor of his soul, and be satisfied. By his knowledge my righteous servant shall justify many, for he shall bear their iniquities. Therefore I will divide him a portion with the great, and he will divide the spoil with the strong, because he poured out his soul unto death. And he was numbered with the transgressors, and he bore the sin of many, and made intercession for the transgressors. I mean, I don't know if you've seen The Passion, just as an example, or even if you just read about crucifixion or the Romans as torturers and destroyers of life, but they were really, really good at it. And I think it's no coincidence that Christ came in their time. That they did so mightily and strongly, but also, I mean, I have this pet theory or whatever, that it was time also for the Lord's plan to be revealed, that he talked about 800 years previous to it happening. That the Roman Empire being such a, arguably one of the most dominant and widespread empires in the history of human civilization. And in that time, he sent his son, that word then might pass throughout throughout just Rome, and it would spread through much of the world. And the world would know that the creator of the world seeks a personal relationship with you, and sacrificed of himself, sent a blameless, sinless emissary to live amongst us, move amongst us, teach amongst us, speak love amongst us, and then suffer as though he had done great wrong when we had done the great wrong. And not only was he destroyed physically for hours and hours, literally probably, a half a day of suffering for me. At some point, he was actually removed from his spirit, which had always dwelt with God and of God and been infused by God and just lived all moments for his Father. The Father actually removed his presence from his beloved Son. So he not only suffered bodily, he suffered spiritually, like his soul, his very soul was rent asunder. And he was denied the presence of God. Literally, God turned his face from him. As this is all part of the plan. And as God should turn his face from us for all that we do not only in our lives and who we are, but just on a daily basis, man. But such love as to leap on that grenade, Christ leapt on that grenade, and then wasn't celebrated, was tossed in was decried by his major, if you will. Just a horrible amount of suffering and loneliness and sorrow. A man well acquainted with sorrow, they said 800 years before, and well he was, for us, that we might fall at the feet of that sacrifice and be transformed. Unlucky him, lucky us.